How many times have we launched into parent training assuming that because they signed the treatment plan, they truly consented to everything we're about to ask? What if that's a lie that we tell ourselves to feel better about ignoring collaboration? Think about it. You're sitting across from a caregiver who's overwhelmed. They nod, they say yes, but are they truly on board or are they just trying to survive? Are we inviting collaboration or demanding compliance? Welcome back to Action Insights, the intersection of ABA and mental health. My name is Nikki Dionne, and this is my co-host.
Amelia Dalphonse.
And today our episode is titled Stop, Collaborate, and Listen, Rethinking Parent Training in ABA Today. And we're going to be asking some of the hard questions about consent, power, and what compassionate care in parent training really means. Couple quick housekeeping things. You can purchase CUs for this podcast for $5. We will have three code words that will be embedded through the podcast. So wherever you are, either use your awesome brain power to remember, or if you're like me, make yourself a note because you can go in to buy the CUs and then it's going to ask for the three code words, and that's how you'll have access to your certificate. Our first code word is consent. So again, our first code word is consent. You can find all the information for the links and everything in the description of the podcast below.
Consent is such an important part of parent training, and that's why it's our first code word. And consent is kind of the legal aspect of parents agreeing to what we are recommending for services or for treatment. And consent has a lot of different pieces to it. It has to be ongoing consent. Parents are allowed to, at any time, withdraw consent for any part of services that we're delivering. They don't have to consent to all of it. It's not an all or nothing thing. It can be just parts of it, or it could be the whole recommendation that we're creating. And it has to be informed. They have to really understand. And so that's part of the trouble that we often face when we're trying to get true consent, informed consent from parents, is that it's hard, especially at the beginning when they aren't familiar with treatment and what ABA services might look like. It's hard for them to truly be informed about what that looks like. So I have an example of a family that I used to work with when I took over from another BCBA, and the mom had consented to the treatment plan that existed. But it was a treatment plan that was really centered around getting her son to sit and do table work at the kitchen table. And this was a child who didn't do well sitting at the table, but mom was just doing and agreeing to what she thought what the professional was recommending, because they're the professional, they know better. So who is she to disagree with those recommendations? But over time, she started to feel like that didn't really align with what her son needed. But she also didn't feel like she didn't understand that she could withdraw consent.
Mhm.
And I think that that's an important thing that we can bring to families, is an understanding that they don't have to agree with everything that we recommend, and that they can change their mind at any time. So much of parent training, at least for me, when I do parent training, it's all about developing that trusting relationship with the parent so that they feel comfortable saying, "Oh, I don't know about that," or asking me questions.
Yeah. I think it's as you're talking, I'm thinking, my disclaimer too is this is Amy's wheelhouse. So like I'm just here as maybe I'm just listening, but I do have thoughts. But thinking about this idea of coming in as a professional and talking with people who are looking for support. And it's very hard whenever there's a power dynamic, and I won't go down that rabbit hole today, but I come in as a professional, there's a power dynamic where it is hard for some families to know that they can ask questions, or know they can ask for more information, or to know that they can say yes or no to something that I'm offering them. And I think of, as you're talking, I'm thinking of many people I've worked with over the years where I come in and I'm like, I'm here for this thing. Here's our treatment plan. They say yes, they sign it. And then, weeks down the road, I'm like, I wonder why things aren't, working out, or how come this family isn't engaging anymore? And, in hindsight, I almost wonder if some of it really does come down to those first few sessions, building relationships, and kind of very bluntly saying, I'm here with ideas. They may not fit with your family or what you're looking for. It is okay to tell me that you disagree, right? It's okay to change your mind at any time that we're working together. And really thinking about how many of us are offering that to our parents and our clients, but our parents, like as we're working with them and throughout treatment. I've definitely had, here, sign my informed consent, sign my treatment plan. We'll check in 3 to 6 months, and then we never talk about it until it comes up again, versus having this ongoing conversation about somebody's, engagement and consent in treatment. Is such a wonderful place to be, and something that I know that in my past professional life have, not always been as clear or on top of.
Yeah. I just got an email this morning from a pretty new BCBA. She was certified in 2022, and she was saying that the biggest challenge that she's had, and she's worked in a couple of different states, and the biggest challenge that she's had in both states that she's worked in was parent training, because she felt like she was always trying to track parents down to schedule parent training. And she felt like, parent training never lasted very long because there wasn't a lot for them to talk about. The parents often didn't have questions, and she just, that they didn't have a lot to talk about. So parent training would just end, or it would feel awkward, I guess, probably. And I completely can relate to that, because early on in my career, I really struggled with that, because it's like, if parents don't have parent training, is supposed to be about them. So if parents don't have anything on the agenda, what are we going to talk about? And my recommendation to her was to really make sure that you're creating a structure around parent training, so that both, the BCBA and the parent know kind of what the purpose of parent training is, and what they're both going to get out of it. Because the reality is that parent training, I get really into parent training because it's such a passion of mine. But the reality is that those kids whose parents are fully involved in services, they're going to be the ones who have the best outcomes, because their parents are going to understand them a whole lot better than parents who don't participate actively in services. And it's not that often the parents who aren't participating in services, it's not that they don't care about their child or about the services that are being delivered, but they don't understand what their role is in it. Mm-hmm. And they often feel like, oh, well, you're just trying to teach me to be an RBT. I don't want to be an RBT. I want to be a parent. Or a lot of the times, the strategies that we're recommending don't align with what they believe as a parent, what parenting should be. And so when we say, do this, and they're like, but that's not what parents do. Parents do this, then if we can't align our recommendations with what the parents' values are, then of course they're not going to be involved in services.
Yeah, and it kind of, I think we had chatted about it a while ago, and, kind of looking at things like you're really kind of drilling down into consent and assent, right? I always love definitions, so I'm gonna read what we have for our definition. So consent is the active agreement and choice, right, to be in treatment and to agree, like with recommendations. Assent is ongoing participation and comfort in treatment, which I think is such an awesome distinction, because for many years in my professional career, we just talked about consent, and consent was enough, right? But consent isn't enough without assent. Like, I want somebody to be a partner in the work that I'm doing, right? I want parents to be a partner in the work that we're doing together. the one that we haven't kind of mentioned is like the idea of compliance, right? So I love that we have it's just a passive submission under perceived authority, which is like I don't know, it just like stuck in my brain a little bit. So what you're talking about, right, with parents maybe who aren't you've just described two maybe different kind of presentations where you have parents who are super engaged and doing all the things and then other parents who are maybe aren't, or we say like try the thing and they're like okay because I told them to, but there's no buy-in. Like, is that just compliance? They say yes, so we interpret it as consent, but that active participation piece isn't there. And so like, like just kind of thinking about that in the context of parent training and how that might impact some of the things that you're talking about. It's just interesting to think about for me.
Right. And I've worked for agencies who have put it out there that, oh, if you cancel parent training sessions or if you fail to follow through with this, then we're going to terminate services. And I just, one, I don't know why agencies don't understand reinforcement strategies work for parents as well as children, and why we would resort to some sort of punishment type procedure or threat, even because they're probably not actually going to pull services. But that's, I guess, a topic for another day. But the reality is that the that those strategies aren't effective. Yes, you might get parents to actually sit down with you and get you into a room so you can technically bill for it, but that doesn't actually do the child any good. It doesn't do the parents any good. And one of the things that I find most motivating about parent training is my goal when I go into parent training is how can I make the parents' lives a little bit easier?
Mhm.
So it's not how can I get the parents to do what we're doing in sessions. And I think that that's an important distinction because when I first started with parent training, it was like, how can I get them to follow through with what we're doing in the clinic so that we can generalize the skills?
Mhm.
But the reality is that those things aren't going to happen at home the same way that they happen in the clinic. And we don't really want them to because the clinic or even home-based services, those services aren't, I mean, sometimes I'm a big user of naturalistic teaching. And so to a certain extent, some of those skills can generalize to the home kind of as they are. But parents have a whole different level of concerns that aren't being addressed in session. And if we never meet those concerns or address those concerns, then parents are going to just continue to struggle. And we might be teaching them to implement tact training, but we're not helping them get through bedtime, or we're not helping them get their child's shoes on so that they can get out the door in the morning. So I think it's really important that we sit down and focus on what the parents' values are, what their biggest concerns are, and work to give them what I refer to as quick wins. Like I just want to give them a quick win. How can I show them in a matter of minutes? If I could do it in a matter of minutes, then I immediately get the parents to buy in.
Mhm.
So I'll ask them, and I use this analogy all the time, and it's a little bit silly, but I say if I had a magic wand and could change one thing about your day,
Yeah.
what would make the biggest impact on your day? And I get little things. It's usually not, I want him to not have a tantrum
Mhm.
or I don't want him to hit me. Those are important things and they usually come along. But usually when I pull out my magic wand question, I get parents who say, I just want him to get in the bathtub. That's it. I just want him to get into the bathtub without a fight. And I'll be like, oh, excellent. Let's go do that.
Mhm.
Are you comfortable with us getting him into the bathtub? Let me show you how you can do that. And I literally had a parent with this exact situation. She couldn't get him into the bathtub. He was crying, screaming, and very upset. And my solution was not make him get in the bathtub. My solution was turn the water on, fill the tub, bring him into the bathroom once the tub is already full.
Mhm.
His concern was he was so afraid when the water was coming out, filling the tub, that because one time he accidentally pulled the thing to make the shower come on. So
Yeah.
he was so afraid when the water was running. He didn't understand why the shower had come on. He just expected it might come on suddenly.
Yeah.
Um, but literally, she had been struggling with this for weeks, and we fixed it in a matter of a few seconds. She went
Mhm.
in, filled the tub. We brought him in. He got in the tub without any fuss at all.
Yeah.
And she was so excited by that little change and so excited. And it made such a huge difference in her day because she was really dreading the end of the day because she was getting him into the tub. Well, she was getting him into the tub every day. And then she was starting to back off because of the fight.
Right.
So if you can dig into something like that, then parents are just so on board with anything else that you present to them.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's so interesting, right? Because, well, the like collaborative piece, that's what I meant earlier with the partnership, right? Like you're in partnership with a parent. Like I am literally here for you. What will make your life easier? And you show that it's doable. But I think what maybe I'd like to add in, just because, I have to like mental health it a little bit, is that the part to remember is that most of the time, I'll speak from my experience and you can tell me if this sounds true. When I'm connected with a family, oftentimes I'm not, unless the child is very, 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 very young. I am not the first service provider that they have seen. I'm not saying ABA specifically, but I am not the first service provider that they have seen. A lot of the families that I've worked with have often sought out help because they are at their kind of wits end. They are at the threshold, right? I'm not seeing people the first time, for example, that this child had a hard time getting into the bathtub, and that's the only thing that they're experiencing. We're usually working with parents and caregivers who are experiencing their own levels of stress and emotion and, kind of mental health stuff that's pulling into it too. And the value of what you just said is so much more important than just getting the treatment plan signed or, kind of just doing like the checkbox stuff, right? Because you're like boots on the ground. You're validating us like a really significant concern that the parent has, even if the child is aggressive or having tantrums, right? You're starting with what's important for the parent. And so you're entering into partnership. We're not actively assessing from necessarily mental health stuff in the parents or emotional health or emotional well-being right off to start, but those things have a really direct impact right? On relationships and building. And I think that that's where, the kind of trauma-informed, compassionate, collaborative, like integration stuff is so important. That's why we're doing this stuff, right? But like, especially with parent training, I can work with a kid all day long, but if the parents aren't on board, if I don't have a relationship with the parent, then it can really impact the direction of services as it moves forward.
Yeah. And it significantly impacts the the outcomes of services, but also the duration of services. Either services last exceptionally longer than they need to because there's no follow through at home, or parents just quit and they think that services aren't effective because in my experience, unless I get parents to buy into all of the things that I'm trying to teach, then they tend to fall back on their um, routines, their familiar habits as parents, and nothing changes at home. So the child just isn't making progress. And I think that there's a lot of ethical concerns for me in a lot of that because I I struggle with the insurance model because I think that it has shifted our priorities in the field from what's best for the child to what's best for the business. And we have gotten into this routine where the RBT session is just the end all be all of the services, when in fact, in my experience, parent training, it should be the primary service with some RBT support, some direct services in addition to the parent training. Because if we can get the parents to understand a lot of this, and some families just aren't capable because the parents have their own struggles, or the behavior is so severe that they actually do need that intensive level of support. But I do think that there's a large number of our clients where if we shift the focus to parent training, prioritize parent training over the RBT sessions, then we can actually significantly cut back on the overall cost of care over that child's experience. And the fact that we don't prioritize that, or we don't look at that from an ethical perspective, is a problem for me. And that's one of the challenges I have with insurance funded services. But as far as ethics go, we look at informed consent. We look at needing to make sure that we're addressing the family's culture and respecting and honoring their culture. And we need to maintain those professional relationships. There's so many ethical pieces to the parent training piece of it, and building that collaborative relationship. And I mean, in my master's program, and probably in yours, because we went through the same program, we had an entire course, or I did. I don't know if it was still around when you went through the program, but I had an entire course on I forget what it's called, but it's essentially a collaboration model.
Yeah.
Where behavioral collaboration, I'll have to find it and I can put it
Behavioral
in
consultation and collaboration class, right?
yes.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, we have that too.
Behavioral consultation and collaboration. But I think that that's missing in so many programs. But that might be part of why I am as passionate about collaboration as I am. But so many other programs are focused on getting BCBAs to pass the test, that they're missing all of this important work.
Yeah. And from like an ethical perspective to throw in, I love having these, like, I love ethical conversations in general, where some ethics are just concrete, right? Like, even if you read our ethics around like informed consent, they're structured in this very concrete way. It's almost still like a checkbox. Check, 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 right? It's when stuff like ekes into the gray. Like, I could tell you the things that I absolutely should not do and the things I absolutely should do, right? So even if I take in parent training is important, that our ethics, are supposed to guide us, but like the how I do it becomes where the gray ethic stuff comes, right? That's where the influence from insurance companies or these other things start to make things really murky. And then we're more likely to engage in like questionable ethical approaches or, provision of services, because we're doing the checkbox, but we're not kind of using this like deductive reasoning to think through, sure, I'm doing parent training, but they're not engaging, so I close them, versus am I doing parent training that is the right fit and the right approach and the right interventions for this specific family, right? And when I've supervised people, some of those conversations come up. They're like, well, I offered it. And the conversation is like, let's talk about how it was offered. Let's talk about how you built relationship and collaboration. Let's talk about like how you really considered all of the pieces, not just the checkbox of like, ethically, I should do this thing. Ethically, I should build a professional relationship, but how are you doing it, right?
And I used to, when I was the clinical director for the nonprofit in New Hampshire, I created a pretty robust parent training program. And from the first phone call, when I start describing ABA services, I would lead with parent training. So parents would ask me about ABA services. Yes, Well, here's the thing. So the BCBA, as the BCBA, I'll meet with you weekly so that we can start to address some of the challenges that you're having at home. And and your child can have access to direct services within RBT. So a lot of times it's helping parents understand right from the first conversation how important their role is in ABA services, because I think a lot of times parents are thinking that, oh, ABA services, it's like speech therapy. I drop them off and they take them in the back, they do their whatever magic with them and bring them back out. But they don't necessarily understand how involved they need to be in order for ABA to be as effective as it could be. And and I just think that there's so many more opportunities for parents to be able to connect with other parents. I created a group parent training. Once a month, I would host group parent training. I would have a, a topic that I'd talk about, and the parents would be able to connect with each other. I couldn't bill for it because we didn't have group parent training codes back then, but it didn't matter. That's not why I was doing it. I was doing it because it's what was best for the families. And I think we just need to get back to that, lead with it.
Well, I think I love that you brought that up. First, our second code word
Oh,
is collaboration. So our second code word is collaboration. And I love that you brought that up because I think it just reminds us, it almost stretches like the idea of collaboration, right? So collaboration isn't just necessarily me directly with a caregiver or a parent. Like collaboration can be with other parents to parents or caregiver to caregiver. It could be BCBA to BCBA. It can be BCBA to like there's just so many avenues for collaboration that strengthens parent training and the assent part of parent training, right? If I have people who are all having shared experience, I offer opportunity for them to be partners at the table, right? I provide collaboration. The likelihood that parent training is seen by parents and caregivers as a valuable resource and has positive outcomes increases.
mhm.
And so and I know you, so I'm not surprised that you did a group that you didn't get paid for because like that's who you are and you see the value in it. And that's the ethical piece, right? Where the gray part is like you could be like, well, insurance isn't paying for it. We have to get reimbursed. Like, I'm not going to do this thing, but then what's the violation for ethics? So, not that I'm saying go do all free services for everybody. So please don't hear that, listeners. But how do we start to balance out the things that we know are important and provide those opportunities for the parents and caregivers that we're working with?
Right. I, as part of the parent training program that I developed, I really focused on creating a lot of different choices, which I think is a really important part of that collaborative process, because having that one-to-one didactic training just isn't what most parents want. Some of them do, but we had that one-to-one didactic training as an option. I would do community-based parent training. We'd go to Target or the playground or wherever they needed some support. I would do what I call play clinics, and we'd have the parents come in, we'd bring the kid in, and we'd work on some of the goals. We'd just sit on the floor and we'd play with their child, and I would model a lot of the strategies. And then we had the group parent training. So parents could pick and choose what parts of the model worked best for them.
Which is so important in the choice piece. And Amy's not going to plug it, but if anybody is listening, please check out her parent training. You should just plug it, Amy. What's it called?
Achieve the
Yeah.
Achieve parent training curriculum. We just launched our online version yesterday.
Yeah. It's I'm biased because I love Amy, but I also am pretty ethical and I'm a square. So like it's a really, really good program. So I don't mean to like, advertise over here, but if you are interested in strengthening skills and having some guidelines and all of the things around parent training, uh, you know, I think Amy's or Master ABA's like, Achieve Parent training program is really great. So there's your plug for you. But in addition, I think all of those choices, right? You're kind of creating, it's like a la carte, right? Like
Yes.
if if we all went to a restaurant and we were all served exactly the same meal, some of us aren't going to eat it because we don't like what's in front of us. I know this is like such a simple thing, but if I have choice, right? And I can fit something to what I need or want or fits for me, then we all kind of go and have a good time and it's fun and we have positive outcomes for it. So like apply it to the stuff that we're doing with our family is like certain interventions don't fit across every family that I'm working with. Um, and so having choice and having options, really empowers, I think, our parents. And it's such a compassionate place to live in where I sit in a room with somebody or on a Zoom or however you're doing parent training, and I say, as an individual person who is a parent of a child or a caregiver of a child, you have value and you have choice and you have decision making, and I'm here for it, and I want to do this journey with you, not tell you how to do it, right? Like I want to go and like together with you. And I think it's just such a compassionate place to live in, which I'm sorry I have to do it because our third code word is compassion. Our third code word is compassion.
Oh, and that brings us to the end of this episode. I could literally talk about this all day.
You know what? I think
And
we said that at the end of every single episode. We were like, oh, we have more. So, spoiler alert, probably in the future, we will talk more about this, just like we'll talk more about all the things that we do.
oh, imagine that. So I think our next episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about the science of fraud in ABA. That is something that I found really interesting, and I dug deep into it when I moved from New Hampshire to Florida because I felt like I needed to understand why all of the fraud was happening down here. And I got some really interesting insights. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with all of you. So I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us at Action Insights, and we'll chat with you soon.